Richard Ramirez's crimes left a trail of devastation, but what was really going on inside his mind? Was he born a monster, or was he shaped by his environment? In this video, we dive into the twisted psychology behind the Night Stalkers, brutal killings, and explore the mind of one of America's most infamous serial killers. What drove Richard Ramirez to commit such horrific acts, and what can we learn from the psychology of serial killers? Richard Ramirez became the face of terror in the 1980s, leaving behind a legacy of fear, chaos, and unanswered questions. While the public focused on his brutal actions, very few understood what truly drove him to kill. In this video, we'll dissect the psychological factors that influenced Ramirez's behavior, from his early life to the horrific crimes he committed. Was he just a product of his environment? Was his connection to Satanism more than a fad? Or was there something inherently evil about the way he saw the world? Richard Ramirez's crimes were violent and chaotic, seemingly without any clear motive. His random attacks, sometimes in the dead of night, targeted anyone and everyone. His erratic behavior and lack of a pattern made it incredibly difficult for law enforcement to track him down. But what drove this unpredictability? Was it a need for control, power, or something more complex? One of the most chilling elements of Ramirez's psychology was his apparent lack of remorse. Serial killers often display a level of detachment or indifference to their victims, but Ramirez's behavior took it a step further. His defiance in court, his obsession with Satanism, and his lack of empathy all point to a deeply disturbed individual. But was his satanic obsession a reflection of his true beliefs, or was it just a tactic to feed into the media frenzy and enhance his notoriety? Many experts have pointed to Ramirez's troubled childhood as a key factor in understanding his behavior. Raised in a violent, abusive home, he was exposed to disturbing images and influences at a young age, which may have contributed to the formation of his psychopathic tendencies. But how much of his violence was a result of his upbringing, and how much was a manifestation of his own twisted desires? What makes Richard Ramirez so fascinating to the public is not just his crimes, but the psychological complexity behind them. We are often drawn to understanding the why behind the brutality of serial killers, searching for clues that might help us understand how someone could commit such unthinkable acts. Ramirez's case has sparked endless debates among criminal psychologists and experts. Was he simply a product of a broken society, or was there something inherently evil within him? His continued defiance and manipulation of his image, even in prison, only added to the mystique. The public fascination with his psychology speaks to our collective desire to understand what makes a person capable of such monstrous actions. Richard Ramirez's actions may have been shocking, but what truly makes his case so chilling is the lack of answers. Was he a product of his environment, or was he born with an inherent darkness? And what does his case tell us about the psychology of serial killers? Could we have stopped the Night Stalker earlier? And what can we learn from the mind of Richard Ramirez that might help prevent future horrors? Richard Ramirez's trial wasn't just about his conviction, it became a spectacle. How did the Night Stalker behave when finally confronted with the justice he evaded for so long? Did he show any remorse, or did he continue to embrace his role as the villain? What did Richard Ramirez's behavior during his trial reveal about his personality and how the world viewed him? After a year-long spree of terror, Richard Ramirez's arrest marked the beginning of a highly publicized trial that gripped the nation. The courtrooms were filled with spectators, and the media focused on every aspect of the trial. But what set this trial apart wasn't just the gruesome nature of the crimes, it was Ramirez's bizarre behavior and chilling defiance in the face of his victims' suffering. In this video, we will explore the moments in the courtroom, Ramirez's defiant stance, and how the trial shaped the way we view serial killers today. Richard Ramirez's trial began in 1988, and it was one of the most anticipated trials in American history. What made the trial so fascinating was not only the evidence presented, but Ramirez's behavior throughout the entire process. He did not act like the typical defendant. Instead, he reveled in the media coverage, using his trial as a platform to further his dark persona. One of the most chilling moments came when he raised his hand in court and drew a pentagram on his palm signifying his allegiance to Satan. Ramirez openly admitted to being a Satanist and even attempted to use his belief system to justify his horrific crimes. The fact that he embraced this label and continued to present himself as a servant of Satan during the trial sent shockwaves through the media, which only fueled public fascination with him. Ramirez also made multiple outbursts during the trial, further proving his lack of remorse. Instead of showing any empathy for his victims or their families, he continued to behave in a manner that left many wondering if he understood the gravity of his actions at all. But what was the effect of this defiance on the courtroom and the jury? Did his refusal to show any remorse impact the trial in any way, or did it strengthen his status as the villain? How did the victims and their families react to his arrogance, and how did they feel about him being so openly callous? The public's obsession with Richard Ramirez's trial goes far beyond the gruesome details of his crimes. It's the psychological aspects that truly fascinate. His bizarre behavior in court, his defiance, and his willingness to embrace his dark identity as a Satanist captivated the public's imagination. Serial killers often become larger-than-life figures, but Ramirez took this to a whole new level. His trial also sparked national debates about the relationship between criminal behavior and mental illness. Was Ramirez simply a product of his environment, or was he inherently evil? And how much of his behavior was tied to his obsession with Satanism versus his underlying psychological issues? The questions surrounding his psyche became as much of a topic of discussion as the crimes themselves. Ramirez's behavior during the trial led to further sensationalization of his image. He was not just a criminal, he was a villain who seemed to revel in his notoriety. The media couldn't get enough of his court antics, which only solidified his status as one of the most infamous serial killers of all time. Richard Ramirez's trial may have ended in conviction, but did it truly answer the most important questions about him? Was his behavior in court just a play for attention, or was it a glimpse into his soul? How did his courtroom actions shape his legacy as the Night Stalker? What does his trial reveal about the connection between public perception and true crime villains? Years after his conviction and death, Richard Ramirez's name still sends chills down our spines. But why does the Night Stalker continue to haunt the world of true crime? And how has his dark legacy influenced modern criminal investigations and media? What makes the Night Stalker's legacy so enduring? And why does his story continue to captivate people across the world? Even after Richard Ramirez's death in 2013, the legacy of the Night Stalker continues to resonate in the world of true crime. His horrifying crimes, his media manipulation, and his defiance in the courtroom have made him an iconic figure in the history of serial killers. But what makes his legacy so powerful? Why does Richard Ramirez continue to be the subject of documentaries, books, and podcasts, even decades after his reign of terror ended? In this video, we'll examine the Night Stalker's lasting impact on the true crime community and popular culture. From the media's obsession with his persona to the psychological discussions his case sparked, we'll explore how Richard Ramirez's crimes shaped the true crime genre, and how his story continues to influence criminal investigations today. Richard Ramirez's infamy was cemented not only by the brutality of his crimes, but by the media frenzy surrounding his arrest and trial. His chilling behavior in court, his satanic obsession, and the randomness of his attacks made him the perfect figure for media outlets to cover. Ramirez didn't just commit murder, he became a spectacle, with his trial being broadcast nationwide, and his image becoming synonymous with pure evil. But the Night Stalker's legacy goes beyond just the headlines. His case pushed law enforcement to rethink how serial killers were tracked. The unpredictability of his actions and his apparent lack of any clear motive made him a unique challenge for investigators, prompting changes in how the FBI and local authorities used behavioral profiling and criminal psychology in tracking suspects. Ramirez's case helped pave the way for better coordination between agencies when dealing with serial killers, something that would be essential for future investigations. In addition to changing criminal investigation tactics, Ramirez's story influenced how society views serial killers and true crime today. He became a symbol of evil in popular culture, the embodiment of the satanic serial killer archetype. His case helped fuel the true crime boom that's dominated media in recent years, with new documentaries, series, and podcasts dedicated to exploring his psychology, his crimes, and the lasting effects of his actions. The fascination with Richard Ramirez is not just about his crimes, but about how he fits into the broader narrative of criminal behavior. He wasn't just another serial killer, he was a media creation larger than life villain who seemed to enjoy every moment of his notoriety. His refusal to show any remorse, his chilling interviews from prison, and his defiance in court made him an iconic figure in the true crime world. What makes his story so enduring is the combination of fear and curiosity he evokes. People are drawn to the unpredictability of his behavior and his apparent lack of empathy. The fact that he was able to evade capture for so long, the randomness of his attacks, and his bizarre obsession with Satanism have made his case a subject of endless discussion among criminologists and true crime enthusiasts. Ramirez's legacy has shaped how we consume true crime today. He's not just a killer, he's an archetype, a symbol of evil and chaos. His story helped define the genre for a new generation of crime enthusiasts, and his name is still synonymous with terror, even decades after his death. Richard Ramirez's legacy lives on in the world of true crime, but what does it say about our society that we continue to be so fascinated by figures like the Night Stalker? What does his lasting influence on crime culture say about our need to understand evil? Is the public's obsession with serial killers healthy? Or has the Night Stalker left behind a dangerous blueprint for glorifying violence? Richard Ramirez's last years were filled with mystery, but perhaps the most chilling question remains. What was going through the Night Stalker's mind in his final days? Did he feel regret for his victims? Or did he die as defiantly as he lived? What were Richard Ramirez's final thoughts before his death? And how did he perceive the legacy of his horrific crimes? Richard Ramirez spent his last years in prison, where his health deteriorated after he was diagnosed with terminal cancer. Despite his illness, the Night Stalker remained a defiant and enigmatic figure until the end. Did he show any remorse in his final days, or did he continue to embrace the persona that made him one of the most feared serial killers in history? In this video, we explore Richard Ramirez's last words, his final interviews, and the chilling messages he left behind before his death. After his arrest and conviction, Richard Ramirez spent over 2 decades on death row, where he became infamous, not just for his crimes, but for his defiant behavior and satanic beliefs. Even after his diagnosis of terminal cancer in 2012, Ramirez remained a figure of fascination, giving interviews, writing letters, and continuing to engage with the media. But did he ever reflect on his actions? Was there any remorse for the pain he caused? Or did the Night Stalker remain unapologetic until his final breath? In the months leading up to his death in 2013, Ramirez gave several interviews from his prison cell. During these conversations, he continued to embrace his image as a satanic figure. He often made statements that suggested he still believed he was doing the devil's work, claiming that his crimes were part of a higher purpose. However, there were also moments where Ramirez's behavior seemed to show a more human side. In a rare moment of clarity, he reportedly expressed a desire for peace, but even this was intertwined with his need for recognition. One of the most haunting aspects of Ramirez's last days was his refusal to acknowledge the full extent of the suffering he caused. Instead of showing remorse for his victims, Ramirez's comments continued to focus on his own suffering and legacy. Did his death represent a final act of defiance, or was there a hint of regret behind the surface? The public's fascination with Richard Ramirez's last days speaks to a larger cultural obsession with the psychology of serial killers. People are drawn to figures like Ramirez because they seem to defy our understanding of human nature. His behavior in prison was as erratic and unpredictable as his crimes, leaving us wondering if he ever truly understood the evil he had committed. What makes his final words so chilling is the contrast between the man who terrorized California and the man who, in his last moments, was still seeking attention and recognition. His death, like his life, remained a spectacle, one that captivated the media and kept his name in the public eye even as his health failed. Did he die unrepentant? Or was there more to his final days than we realize? Ramirez's case also raises uncomfortable questions about the justice system, the media, and our own curiosity about the darkest aspects of human behavior. By continuing to focus on his story, have we unknowingly glorified his legacy? Are we guilty of feeding into the media-driven fascination with evil? Or are we simply trying to understand the unexplainable? Richard Ramirez's final days may have been filled with defiance, but did they hold any true revelation about his mind? Was there a moment where the Night Stalker came to terms with the horror he inflicted? Or did he remain unchanged to the end? Did Ramirez die with his secrets? Or did he leave us with one final piece of the puzzle? Richard Ramirez's killing spree left a lasting scar on California and on the true crime world. But even after his death, questions remain. Can we ever fully understand the mind of a serial killer? And what does his legacy mean for the victims who survived him? Is there ever true closure after the terror the Night Stalker unleashed? Or is his shadow one that will linger forever? The story of Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, is a dark chapter in true crime history. His reign of terror, marked by unpredictable killings and chilling satanic symbolism, captivated the world. But his legacy goes beyond just his horrifying actions. It's a story of psychological manipulation, media sensationalism, and the search for justice. Even after his conviction, imprisonment, and eventual death, the Night Stalker's impact continues to be felt by his victims, their families, and the public. This video takes a final look at the haunting legacy Richard Ramirez left behind, exploring the long-term effects of his crimes and the question of whether true closure is possible for those affected by him. Richard Ramirez's legacy is far more than the crimes he committed. It's about the cultural impact he had and the lasting effects of his actions. His crimes were random, but they caused deep trauma for the survivors and their families. In the years after his arrest, some survivors have spoken out about the long-lasting effects his violence had on their lives, while others continue to heal, trying to reclaim their narratives. But closure for the victims is something that can never fully be attained. The nature of his crimes, the randomness, the fear, and the unpredictability left a scar that can't easily be erased. Even after his death in 2013, the Night Stalker's legacy is a reminder of how fragile life can be and how deeply terror can affect a community. The media's fascination with his story has only added to the complexity of this legacy, leaving victims and society at large to wrestle with his impact. The case has also raised important questions about how serial killers are viewed in the media. The Night Stalker became a symbol of pure evil, and his infamy only grew through media coverage. Was this exposure justified? Or did it glorify the very person who caused so much pain? For the survivors and families of his victims, closure is not about forgetting Ramirez, but finding a way to live with the memories of what he did. Some survivors have turned to advocacy and have become voices for victims' rights, using their painful experiences to help others. Yet, for many, the haunting memories of the Night Stalker's terror remain unresolved. What makes the story of the Night Stalker so compelling, even today, is that his case represents the ultimate challenge of understanding the mind of a serial killer. Richard Ramirez, like many others, was both terrifying and fascinating. He used the media to his advantage, shaping his persona as a satanic figure to manipulate the public's fear and curiosity. The public's obsession with Ramirez's case raises important questions about society's relationship with crime and violence. Why are we so drawn to the dark and the mysterious, especially when it comes to serial killers? Is it our desire to understand evil? Or are we simply fascinated by the spectacle of horror? Ramirez's case sparked an ongoing conversation about the ethics of true crime media. While some argue that it's necessary to study these criminals to understand their motivations, others believe that glorifying these figures only perpetuates their legacy and diminishes the suffering of their victims. Richard Ramirez's story may have ended with his death, but his legacy will continue to shape our understanding of true crime and justice for years to come. Was there ever real closure for the victims? or does the Night Stalker's shadow remain forever inescapable? Can we truly understand the nature of evil, or is the darkness that the Night Stalker embodied something that will always elude us? This is the final video in our series, but the questions left behind by Richard Ramirez's legacy will continue to resonate. The Night Stalker may be gone, but the search for understanding and closure remains.
Don't forget to subscribe, like, share and leave review in the comment below.